Hey, 4-Pack fans. We appreciate the support y'all have given us so far, and we want to give back. Beginning with this episode, we're running a giveaway for the month of July. Give us a subscribe on YouTube and comment Hot Take Summer on this or any video we post this month, and you'll be able to win $25 for one of us on CashApp. Multiple comments do not equal multiple entries, but if you guys want to stop in and chat, we won't stop you. Alright, and we're back. The first time ever for this show, episode 10. And it's also our first two episodes a week format. How's it feel, boys? To be back at the table for the second time in a week.
Feeling
Second
good.
time.
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah. Drink up that terrible ham beer you selected. As always, it's your host, Ian Power, joined by my good friend Frankie Santiago, my less good friend today, Matt Vitale.
It tastes like
Matt Vitale, why don't you show off our, I don't know if you can really call this beer, but show off our drink of the week to our viewing audience.
This is exactly beer. Like when a set producer is looking for, I need cans of beer to look like the most beer thing ever. This is what they go and pick, especially for it's like that stereotypical, not their present father, but ham beer. It tastes so classic and American, made in Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's brewed since 1865. I think we actually got this beer from 1865. I can't stress enough how much I dislike this choice.
What,
but
there's not enough IPAs in it for you?
Frankie's the IPA kid. I mix it up.
I gotta say though, the can's not ugly,
It's clean.
but there's a lot of font on it.
It's a classic looking can. There is
There
a lot,
is a lot
it's a lot
of
of hard to
font.
read font too.
Yeah, back then in the 70s and whatnot, it was all just how much script can you put on the can.
Well, I won't be sad when ham is in the rearview mirror. Before we launch into the show, as always, give us a follow on YouTube if you like what we're bringing to the table. If you enjoy seeing our smiling faces and hearing us talk about football and nonsense. Every subscribe, every follow, it all helps us get our information out to the masses, so we can help more and more people win their fantasy leagues.
Yeah, and like I said, if you don't like our takes, give them to your friends in your fantasy leagues because we'll help them lose if you think we're bad.
Yeah. Either way, either way, we appreciate the
Win-win.
share, and your friends will appreciate you if you send them our way, and then we help them win. So it's a win-win-win-win-win-win.
It's a win sandwich.
Before we launch into the show today, I do just want to go over some news. We are getting into that point of the season where the news is starting to break a little bit quicker as we speed towards, if we even have the preseason this year, but as we speed towards where the preseason would be, biggest news obviously is Mostert wanting a trade. Like, Schefter's reporting on it. It's out there. It's confirmed. Mostert wants out of San Francisco. What do you guys think about that? I'm personally a big fan of him leaving because I think it just gives a whole new dynamic to that team and to whoever Mostert goes to.
I'm interested to see who would be looking to trade for Mostert. I think he's a quality running back. My guess is he just sees the writing on the wall that he's probably not going to get the contract there that he wants for one reason or another. My worry is that he lands on a team with a promising running back, maybe like those middle tier guys that we like, because there's not like.
You mean like Philadelphia, who doesn't have a second running back on their team that they can have still carries for Miles Sanders yet?
No, I'd hate that.
I mean, I think that
Or Chicago.
they've always been that run heavy team.
Yep.
But I think the problem in San Fran is the problem I see on a lot of these committee teams is that they just have too many running backs. And I think that he's starting to see that, and he's always produced.
So this is financially based. He wants to be brought up to the level of pay that Tevin Coleman's at, which is $4-ish million a year, and the 49ers don't want to pay him apparently. So
Yeah. I mean, he could try and gamble on himself and see if he can just produce this year and then just, adios that team and go get a new contract. But we all know the shelf life on running backs, so putting a lot of tread on the tires doesn't always help.
and he's also not a spring chicken.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires, as you say, but he's he's been around the league for a little bit. So outside of that, David Njoku also wants out of Cleveland. Great. I don't really think that matters. David Njoku is a fine, athletic, young tight end, and if he does get moved, depending on where he goes, I could see him maybe having an impact. But I don't know. That seems a little bit more like just no news to me. And if he gets moved, we'll sort of cover that when it happens. And then finally, Derrick Henry and the Titans are reportedly not close on a new deal. So nothing to really worry about yet, but something to keep your eye on in case Derrick Henry decides that he wants to follow Dalvin and hold out. We've got a couple situations like that are sort of on watch with Henry and Mixon, where they could both decide to hold out if they don't get the deals they're looking for. So nothing really to worry about yet, but keep it on your radar in case it develops into something more serious than it is currently.
Yeah, if you're one of those people drafting early, maybe you factor that in and take a guy who's a little bit less flashy but is a little more secure with his role.
Like a Kenyon Drake or an Aaron Jones.
Yeah, one of those guys. It doesn't really bump them down a ranking for me. I know what they are, and I think these are going to get worked out, or they're just going to play through and try and go out in the open market.
But who's still out there right now?
I mean, as far as the open market for next year, I don't know exactly off the top of my head who we're looking at, but if you're a team seriously looking to contend, and Derrick Henry's out there, he might be the piece that puts you over the top. If you have a young quarterback that you're not paying an exorbitant amount.
Yeah, as I don't think it's anything really to worry about right this second, but just keep an eye on it as the season inches closer, and if he holds out, adjust accordingly when it becomes relevant, because as we've seen in recent years, drafting a holding out running back on the assumption they're going to play at some point during the year can really come back to bite you.
Oh yeah.
So today we're going to be doing our hot take episode. Better late than never. It took us a little while to get everything squared away on that and get settled on the format we wanted. Before we launch into the hot takes, though, I wanted to do a new segment with you guys that I call "Who's That Player?" I've already sort of given you guys the rundown on it, but I'm just going to keep this over here so you can't cheat off my sheet, Vitaly. So I have 3 players here. I'm going to read you off the player profile. I've got a couple hints for each player in case you guys are really feeling stumped. Although, fair warning, I didn't really do a deep dive for these players. I'm not going to be asking you guys about like Brashad Perriman or Denzel Mims or anyone off the bottom of the
Brandon
roster.
Marshall, is he on the list?
Who?
Brandon Marshall, is he on the list?
Brandon Marshall's on the list.
So we're not allowed to Google.
Yes, I didn't.
I thought that wasn't given, but I'm double checking.
I wasn't going to state that, but obviously, Google is not
Ham
allowed. Yeah, I want to see your hands off the keyboards, boys.
Well, my hand is on my ham.
So I will tell you the position of the player.
All right.
But aside from that, you all are going to have to guess. So let's launch into my first little player profile here. Graded out as PFF's best running back in 2019. He played a full season, finishing with just under 300 carries and just under 1,500 yards. And despite this, he's currently not being drafted as a top 5 running back according to ADP.
2019?
In 2019, he graded out as PFF's top running back.
1,500.
This is according to their running back stat, not their offensive, or their running back grade, not their offensive grade.
All right.
Just over or just under 300 yards?
Just
carries?
under 300 carries and just under 1,500 yards.
2019?
I think I know.
All right.
Are you gonna?
I'll let you go first.
I'm going to go for Mr. Derrick Henry.
You would be wrong.
I will go for...
Would you like a hint?
Let him get his
Okay.
shot.
He's outside of the top 6 now. 1,500 yards, 2019, he was the running back 6. Or
He's currently being drafted.
Oh,
outside.
300.
In 2019, he graded out as PFF's best running back, according to their running back grade, not their overall grade.
Dalvin Cook.
No. I'll give you a hint. This team upgraded their offensive line in the offseason.
This guy's got to be...
Outside the top 6. Outside the top 6 this year?
currently being drafted outside the top 5 running backs.
All right.
Outside the top 5 running backs. Okay, so that narrows it down a little bit. Oh, I think I know who this is. All right, yeah, I know who it is. This would be Nicholas Chobansky.
Yes. It's probably took you guys that long. I figured I was going to give it away with the just under 300 carries and just under 1,500 yards, but...
I knew Derrick Henry was right around 300. I believe he was a little bit over 300, so that's why I was unsure, but I knew it had to be one of those not catching too many balls, pounding the ground type running back, so that's why I was bouncing between Dalvin.
Yes, my final hint was he doesn't catch very many balls. Let's jump from him to another running back here. This player graded out as the best receiver in football amongst qualifying players, according to PFF, despite playing the running back position. In fact, he was targeted 108 times, catching 92 balls for 10.8 yards per reception. He also finished the season with the 4th best offensive grade amongst running backs. Who do you guys think he is?
Christian McCaffrey.
No.
Okay. Over 2.
Hey, you're on a roll here, Frankie.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
brush up on your-
almost done with my first beer.
You might want to brush up on your random stats.
It's just 'cause there's so many guys like that.
Graded out as the best receiver in football amongst qualifying players. So that's running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. It's basically disqualifying people who caught like 3 passes, so they had like a perfect grade at catching.
How many balls did he catch?
100 or 92, 108, 108 targets.
92
108
balls.
targets.
Yeah, he was very heavily targeted in the passing game. You can ask for a hint if you want. You guys already do have a...
I'm going to want a hint for this one because there's a few guys I'm thinking of, but they don't feel like they would be...
He only had 3 rushing touchdowns.
Oh, God. There's like 4 guys, but I feel like they can't be the number 1 receiving option. Like...
Well, no, he just...
I was all to be fair, when I was looking these up for you guys, I had to go back and double check. I was like, no, that can't be right. He was the best receiver in football by a good. He was like a solid A, and the next highest was an A-.
Okay, can we get a bonus hint?
All right, hold on. Before
You
you,
can
do
make
that
a
one,
guess,
I'm
and I'll
going
give
to
you
make
another hint.
a quick guess. Is it Tevin Coleman?
It's not Tevin Coleman.
I think I'll wait for the...
Would you guys like another hint?
Well, I was just gonna ask how many rushing touchdowns he had.
He had 3, and he had 8. And for a second hit, he had 8 touchdowns through the air.
Oh, so that throws it way off for me. 11 touchdowns and my God.
I'll double check that second one just to make sure I'm not giving you guys bad information. But
because I was thinking Tariq Cohen.
Is it Damian Williams?
it is not Damian Williams. That's only one more bad guess from you, Frankie.
And then I gotta finish my second one of these.
Once you guys ask for the third hint, you each have 1 guess left, and then we have to move on.
Yeah, just give me a third hint. I got nothing.
Second round ADP.
This year?
Last year or this year?
This year.
This year.
This year, he's currently rocking a second round ADP.
Is it Austin Eckler?
It's Austin Eckler.
You know what's funny? I was gonna say him first.
I'm surprised it wasn't him immediately after Christian McCaffrey with his passing volume. His receiving volume.
I thought he did more work on the ground. That's why
Yeah.
I thought he was a little more split.
Like,
He had decent yardage on the ground. He did go for 557 yards on the ground.
the 3 threw me off.
132 attempts, but yeah, 92 receptions, 993 yards, 8 touchdowns. Honestly, with what I don't know, we were projecting him for a little bit of a step back, but he's going in like the back of the second right now. He's someone who could be a steal for some lucky fantasy owner, especially with where he's going. You could pair him with like Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, and have a very nice duo.
Yeah.
All right, let's go with the third player on my list here. Hopefully you guys get this one a little bit faster. I know I made the first 2 stumpers apparently, but this player graded out as the 3rd best wideout in 2019 according to PFF.
Okay.
He played in 15 games, targeted 157 times for 99 receptions, and he turned that into 1,394 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Is it Chris Godwin?
He's the top option on his team and is slated for another great year, but holds a second-round ADP. No, it's not Chris Godwin.
I think I know who it is.
Okay, Joel,
Is it, Mr. Julio Jones?
It's Julio Jones. Come on, Frankie. He's your player.
That was my next guess.
The number one thing that tipped it off for me was how many targets he got. He didn't catch as many because I know Julio doesn't have the best catch rating. And then on top of that, when it was only 6 touchdowns he raked in, I knew that was only 6 touchdowns?
Trademark Julio.
I have to get the Ian Homer guesses out of the way in the first round, and then
Trademark Julio. Oh, you guys got to be craftier than that. You know I'm not going to give you 3 players that I love.
You said you were softballing them.
Well, yeah. I gave you guys 3 players that are going in the first 2 rounds.
All right. Well, apparently we're not.
So I tried.
I mean, to be fair, Vitale got Julio pretty quickly, and he wasn't slow on Chubb. Eckler was the only real stumper for you guys.
Yeah.
So we'll play this game ever so often again. I would read up on your stats a little bit because the players that I'm going to profile are probably going to get a little tougher. But
Brandon Marshall.
It's never going to be Brandon Marshall ever, actually. So, without further ado, let's launch into our main segment here. Let's get into those caliente takes.
Spice.
How we're formatting this, we're going to go from less spicy to more spicy. So we're going to give you our takes that we think are the a bit more on the mild salsa side, all the way up to that ghost pepper salsa for our final takes. Frankie was a bozo and didn't prepare 3, so he's be thinking about a third one as we go along. But if he doesn't have one, then it will be just 3 from Vitale and myself and 2 from Frankie. Vitale, do you want to take the floor to lead us off?
You know what? Why don't you, as you're the host, to keep a nice cohesion?
Sure,
on the table?
sure. I'll go first. So, easiest take for me, just given the, I guess, relative ADP of all the players that I'm talking about here, but I think for my least spicy take, I want to say that every Eagles player that's being drafted, and when I say every Eagles player, I mean Carson Wentz, Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Jalen Reagor, Alshon Jeffrey, and Deshaun Jackson are going to outperform their ADP.
You think Zach Ertz is going to outperform his ADP?
I do. I mean, I'm not. This is, and keep in mind, this is a hot take or a bold prediction, if you will. So I'm not exactly banging this drum, shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah,
but
it's a dark horse pick.
Yeah, you're just shouting it on the internet.
But Zach Ertz currently is being drafted as the tight end 4, so behind Mark Andrews. ADP of 42, so back half of the 4th round, and we've seen Ertz be that guy before.
Yeah, he
only had a bad year last year, but he's consistently been a reliable tight end option and usually considered one that's in that upper tier with now Kittle and Kelsey. And there's a lot of hate going around for Ertz right now. I could see him slipping even more as the season goes on, maybe falling past Waller. But he's the least egregious, honestly, on this list. I've maybe Miles Sanders. The rest of the Eagles players, I mean, you got to scroll a while down the ADP list to find them. I'm talking like you're going all the way down to the 80s before you start seeing more Eagles, and that's where Carson Wentz is going as the QB 11 at 90. Despite him having a receiving core that does include all of those names I just mentioned and a pretty talented back in Miles Sanders.
So do you think there's a reason for that? Because I mean,
I think it's injuries. People are scared of the injuries. They're scared of what happened last year with the Eagles, where they all just they played their best Houdini and they vanished on you. But and I know I'm always saying you can't plan for injury. You just bake in risk. The reason this is a hot take is because these are all very risky, with the exception of Jalen Reagor, who we really don't know much about, and Miles Sanders hasn't really shown us any reason to doubt him yet. These are all very risky players. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, these guys average out like 2 games a season at this point in their career.
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz are currently splitting work, but the nice thing about most of these players is they're going so far back in your drafts that they're dart throws anyway. So they're being drafted alongside guys like Darius Slayton, Emmanuel Sanders, Mecole Hardman. And Mecole Hardman's actually going 4 picks ahead of Alshon Jeffrey.
So
does that not seem wrong to you guys?
well, it's like if you look at our last draft, I mean,
Alshon Jeffrey lasted until almost last
sat on
day.
the board for a while.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely there's some merit to the take itself. I mean, when you look at the targets at tight end, especially like Ertz slipping up there doesn't take much when you're targeting the tight end 38% of times when you're throwing it.
Yeah.
So they're also one of the teams that passes the ball the most, 604 targets last year.
I did bake that into my take also. The Eagles love to sling it. They like to throw the rock, and assuming everyone doesn't get hurt immediately again. I mean, Alshon doesn't even have to play a full season to beat a 10th round ADP. If you draft Alshon in that range alongside guys like Robbie Anderson, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Mecole Hardman, you get 6 games of Alshon or 8 games of Alshon at peak Alshon level.
Yeah.
I think it's my least spicy because I think it's one that could very easily come true. I mostly did it just to draw attention to the fact that the Eagles players are absurdly undervalued right now. Let's pass the rock to Vitali here. Why don't you lead us in with your least spicy take?
Well, I'm glad you started off with that, talking a little bit about Ertz, because I want to keep it in the tight end realm. It's kind of why I went with the jersey today, talk about tight ends. But I'm going to talk about a tight end I don't like. That would be Mr. Hooper. Mr. Hooper right now is getting all this shine for all that work he did last year, what I would consider more of a fluke season. When you look back at the Falcons, they hadn't produced a tight end that anyone could really remember for 8 years. And that was the last time they had a good tight end. It was what I would consider the number 1 tight end of all time, Mr. Tony Gonzalez.
Which I agree with.
Most people would consider Tony Gonzalez the best tight end of all time.
Yeah, you can make the argument. Even me as a homer, I think Gronk still has more work to put in. But getting back to my point, so it took a Hall of Fame number 1 tight end to get production out of there. And then the cards aligned, and he was able to produce. He then got injured, but then he got a brand new contract. And as we saw, the Falcons didn't want to buy him back. They much rather go and trade a second-round pick to get young talent in Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, they trade for that new hotness.
Exactly. And it's not like he went to the Eagles, who throw the ball all the time. He went to a team last year who threw the ball only 13% of the time to their tight end, a total of 69 targets. Hard to be very productive and be the tight end 10 when you're only getting 69 balls even thrown your way, and that's if every single ball goes to him and not to, I know Njoku's looking to get traded, but they're going to have a second tight end. Another tight end is going to take at least 10, 12 targets away from him. So now we're down in the 50s. If you're producing that, then you're just saying he's going to get a touchdown every other time. And I do remember that there are some pretty high-priced targets going around in that offense, namely Odell Beckham Jr. He's going to want to get his, and he's a pretty good red zone target. Jarvis Landry, he's good for 100 targets every year. He's a top 20 receiver that everyone loves to sleep on. So with all these factors coming together...
and you can't even forget that Kareem Hunt is on that team, and they've talked about using Kareem Hunt like a wide receiver 3.
Yeah. That, they said, all this stuff together, and then when you look back at Hooper's career, it is 1 year of dominance, and then other years of just hoping he can do something. Maybe he's a guy you pick up for a week.
He was a streamer before last year.
Yeah, he was a streamer again.
He was a guy who was being drafted very late and happened to make fantasy owners very happy last year.
Well, isn't that most tight ends though?
No.
I mean,
there are a good chunk that are in that category, and I'm fine with taking Hooper as that guy. I'll leave him out there on the waiver wire. I'll pick him up against a juicy matchup, or if one of the big guys is down and they need to throw to somebody, because I do think he has talent. That's why he produced where most other Falcons tight ends have not. But to have me take him at the tight end 10 in the 7th round. I'll wait and I'll take my quarterback there because you can get him around the same price as Matty Ice, who I think is going to do much better for your team.
So I wanted to play devil's advocate real fast with Austin Hooper.
Okay.
they've already talked about how they want to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They want to feature the tight end. Do you not think that's going to, and also actually, and to build off of that, David Njoku was hurt for a lot of last year, so their go-to receiving option at tight end was, let me think for a second, I believe Ricky Seals-Jones.
Well, don't you besmirch Ricky Seals.
I wouldn't throw to the tight end much either if he was my best option. Do you not think those 2 factors might come into play to increase the receiving volume for Austin Hooper?
I was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I looked at it the same way. I do project that they are going to be throwing the ball more to their tight end next year.
Do you think it's going to be split up?
I think it's going to, if Njoku's still there, he's going to get some of his.
So what do you have, like 50 to 1, 40 to the other?
I still have it as a 60-40 split. Like I said, I have it more of 60-65. Like, I still have him getting the majority of the targets.
Sure.
The problem is there's already a stunted amount of targets that are going there. Because even when they were throwing, I mean, you go back and the Browns, if I double check, the Browns only threw the ball 112 times to the tight end. So, like I said, once again, if all those go to him, amazing. If he only gets 70 of those, we're right back down to that 70, 60 targets.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the same thing again. I'd much rather spend a little bit more and get, Jared Cook, who's just going a little
Evan
bit.
Ingram.
Evan Ingram. Go guys like that. Or spend a little bit more. Get Waller if you really want that security. Or you can go and take guys that I know you love, TJ Hawkinson. You can get him down.
Me, Hawk.
You can get him in the.
Give me the Hawk strap.
So, would you rather spend a 7th round pick on a guy who's looking at 80 targets, if I'm being generous, or Hawkstrap, who got 13 targets in one game?
No, I actually don't. Like I said, I was just playing devil's advocate. I actually don't disagree with you. I personally don't think that I agree that Hooper is being vastly overdrafted for what is a very unsure situation where he might not see a lot of red zone value either, where they do have, like you said, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. They have Kareem Hunt, who's going to be getting a lot of work out of the backfield and potentially lining up as a wide receiver. And then they do still have Nick Chubb, who had 15 attempts in the red zone last year. And he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose. I mean, he might lose some of that, but he's not going to lose all of his red zone equity. He's still going to maintain a lot of that. And you have to factor, there's only so, unless you project the Browns to be scoring 50 touchdowns or something absurd like that, there's only so much touchdown work to go around. And Hooper's like 4th or 5th on my list of like guys I want to target in the red zone.
Yeah, like I said, all those reasons together, I'm just going to wash my hands of it. 7th round, I'll be looking for that first guy on my bench or my quarterback.
Sure, I like the take. All right, let's kick it over to Frankie for a, I believe, quarterback take, correct?
It is. And, I kind of restructured this take a little bit. You know what, mate? I'm gonna work both into one.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start off with the lower.
Wow us with your quarterback knowledge.
With the, I guess, the more mild of the takes, if you will. I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to dramatically outperform his current ADP. And I would say that in my time watching football, prime Aaron Rodgers.
Wait, what is his current ADP?
His current ADP, just to double check.
So I'm going to throw you off.
84 currently.
84.
Didn't mean to throw you off there, but I felt it was important that we established that.
And let me just add a little extra shade for you to fight against. He is also being ranked as the 108 as far as players go. So his ADP is actually better than his ranking per Fantasy Pros.
That's not really throwing shade. That's helping me actually in this case.
That's what I'm saying. The community's throwing shade.
And I know we touched on this a little bit in the last episode where we talked about how it's hard to kind of move Aaron Rodgers up because there are just so many.
There's a lot of consistent guys ahead of him.
And there's a lot of dual threat quarterbacks who can also run. But we've seen Rodgers run.
Not like some of the guys ahead of him can run, though.
Well, I'm not going to disagree there. But I think that as far as, like, if you look at Aaron, Let me pull up Aaron Rodgers real quick.
Yeah, he's got that Andrew Luck mobility where he can snag you 30 on the ground and maybe a touchdown, but he's not.
You're never looking for him to run. He's not like
Right.
Josh Allen or Kyler Murray, where you're like, cool, he could get me 300 and 100.
Yeah, like
you're never expecting that 100-yard bonus for Rodgers.
Yeah, but that's the thing is if you sleep on him and they don't have a spy over the top, he could just scoot 10 yards into the in for the end zone, and there you go. You get 6 points instead of 4.
He's somebody, and he we've seen him do that a lot in seasons past too. He's someone who may not have the rushing totals, but he may have some sneaky touchdowns that really juice his points.
I mean, even if you're just looking at touchdown volume here, other than barring 2017, which I mean 31, 40, 16, 25, 26. He missed in 2017 he did not play that full season. That was the year he got injured.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, with the weapons he has, Devontae Adams,
Alan Lazard going into his third year,
which is typically when wide receivers pop.
Aaron Jones,
Like
this new fullback they got.
We'll touch on Aaron Jones a little bit. But I mean, it's hard to argue like the value you're getting with such a late round guy. I mean, like again, not to go back to Lara's last video again, but we talked about how undervalued Aaron Rodgers is right now.
He's someone who, given where he's going, you think he has a very high ceiling.
Oh, 100%. Like I don't think that. I put him.
So where do you have him? Where do you have him? Like, what's your take on him aside from he's undervalued?
Where's the spice?
Yeah, what do you think he's going to turn in?
Well, the mild spice, as I like to put it, is
Spice.
he could be top 5. I don't see him finishing anywhere out of the top 10. Now,
Okay, well he's currently being rated as the QB 8, so I hope he doesn't finish outside the top 10.
well, now we're gonna go to my original take, which is that Matty Ice, my boy, is gonna be the QB1 this year, and I'm gonna tell you why.
Yeah, it's a little bit spicier.
There's some caliente sauce in there.
So over the past 5 years, he's averaged out as the top 10 quarterback. Had 2 second place finishes, 2 outside of the top 10. But we have that up down.
Yep.
For Matty Ice. Now I would say that Todd Gurley a little bit better than Devonta Freeman. Devonta Freeman we've talked about before has had that that 1.5 good years, and then he kind of just faded off into the sunset. Todd Gurley, obviously bad year last year, being drafted super low. I think if you can get both of these guys on your team, especially where Matty Ice is going, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, 2 wide receivers.
Oh, it's an easy 3-stack.
Oh. Don't like if I can get all 3 of those guys on my team, I'm a very happy guy. Unless it's the bye week, in which case I'm not. But I mean, we've seen MVP Matty Ice before.
Yep.
We've seen him get top 2 finishes twice. And even last year, on a bad year, I mean, he still turned in 44,000 yards, 26 touchdowns. I mean, he can be that number 1 guy.
Yeah, I mean, 11-2, 15-2 are his finishes in the last 4 years. Like, and they're a high volume offense. I think 1 point to your takes credit too. Their head coach is fighting for his job. Like, he's someone who was rumored to have been on the hot seat, potentially on his way out mid-season last year. He somehow survived. They're gonna be pulling out all this. I do agree. I mean, I've talked to you guys about both of your takes. I do agree with you guys on a lot of your takes. I think that this one is an interesting one because I think the ceiling is there for Matty Ice. I think it's like the perfect storm of things going right for him to have him end up at that number 1 spot.
And I mean, it's like, I think that Todd Gurley is honestly the biggest part of that because he's shown like that he's that pass catching back. I think more so than Devonta Freeman did even in his prime. And also, it's another thing of, like I said, on a down year for Matty Ice, they were still throwing the ball a ton, but that's because we're down in games, and he's got a healthier offensive line this year. He's got the weapons to do it. He could have like a Pat Mahomes-esque year. I mean, I'm not to say he's going to, but he very well could.
Well, and to be clear, that's what he would need to have to finish 1 because Matt Ryan doesn't run.
Yeah. That's like I said. That's where the Caliente part of these takes come in. They are a dark horse, and everything, all the stars need to align. And I do like the fact that you brought up the coach is fighting for his job, because we also have Todd Gurley who's fighting for his job. So he's not going to be taking plays off. He's going to be fighting through for everything. And having a legit running back is going to open up the field so much for Matty Ice to be able to just sling it and actually get Julio Jones the touchdowns he should have been scoring all these years.
Yeah. I don't have any issues with that take. I mean, you guys know I'm excited about Matt Ryan. I'm currently redoing my rankings because my computer very kindly corrupted my file and I lost everything. But before I had lost it all, you guys know I had Matt Ryan in my top 3 at quarterback with just over half the league statted. So I'm very bullish on him this year. I think even without the running aspect, Matt Ryan is going to be a very nice fantasy option for some lucky owner this year. I do want to bring up one potential downside to that, though. There's sort of the yin to your yang for that take, and that is the ever-present threat of COVID this season. The Falcons do have some abhorrent depth. They are a very top-heavy team. You could very easily see that team, whether it be COVID or some random injury to, Todd Gurley or Julio, both of whom have had injury issues in the past, just wipe out that team's chances of being a top offense. Because they only need to lose like one player, and all of a sudden they are no longer being talked about as one of the best offenses in football. They're just some middle-of-the-road offense where you like some of the pieces, but not all of them.
I think they honestly could be
right, but
I won't say the best offense. We'll put them top 2.
Right, but my point is, it takes a single grain of sand to get into the the machinery of that offense, and it could throw the whole thing off kilter.
I got you.
All right, so we're circling back around to me.
That's how it works.
Well, not to bring up 2 quarterback takes in a row here, but I'm going to be going in a different direction of my quarterback take, at least as far as age is concerned. I'm going to be talking about the Bengals' new quarterback, Joe Burrow. A guy who, the more I look at him and the more I look at his situation, the more I think that his ceiling is the moon. I mean, so we know Andy Dalton was a good, not great quarterback. He was serviceable. He got into the playoffs, it seemed like every other year. But you were never reaching for Andy Dalton, even with weapons like A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, recently Joe Mixon. I mean, he was just, even with awesome options. I mean, realistically, Joe Burrow has one of the best wide receiver cores in football. If they're all healthy, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, T. Higgins, the new wide receiver they just drafted. I mean, he's got
Gio.
They've got Mixon, they've got Gio. Like they've got a lot of formidable weapons on that team. Obviously, Dalton could never get it done, but I really like what I see with Joe Burrow. I've spent a little bit of time watching film on him, and trying to, because obviously he has no NFL stats, so I'm trying to sort of pick up on what he can actually do in the NFL. One thing I really love about Joe Burrow, he has excellent vision, and he's really good at avoiding sort of like losing his sight on the field when he's under pressure in the pocket. He takes unnecessary sacks every once in a while, but if the pocket's shrinking around him, he's not ducking and running like Baker Mayfield. He's keeping those eyes locked downfield, looking for his wide receiver. So yeah. He's got excellent vision. He's a very good decision maker. He can fit the ball into tight pockets, and especially if A.J. Green bounces back this year and actually plays, he's got a duo of A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd with a running back like Joe Mixon to come out of the backfield. I know that their tight end situation isn't to be desired, but I don't really think that matters because between John Ross and T. Higgins, they've got a great 3rd and 4th wide receiver as well. They could honestly just run 4 wide receiver sets and just let Burrow just sit back there and sling it. Obviously, he's still a rookie. You want to temper your expectations. I'm not recommending necessarily drafting him over more proven people like a Matt Stafford or a Matt Ryan. But I mean, if you're sitting there in the back of your draft and you missed on all of the old guard of quarterbacks, I think that Joe Burrow could very easily be a top 5 quarterback with, top 3 upside, depending on what he can do with that offense. Because I mean, Zach Taylor, he's a great offensive mind. He came from the Sean McVay system, where we saw that offense just absolutely fly with a mediocre guy like Jared Goff at the helm.
Yeah,
I don't think that Jared Goff can hold Joe Burrow's jockstrap. Like Joe Burrow is like talent-wise leaps and bounds better than Goff. He's got a good coach, good running back, great wide receiver core. I think it all comes down to how fast can he adapt to the NFL. If he can figure out how to sling that ball and how to be a successful NFL quarterback, ceiling is he breaks the rookie touchdown record, and just looks like an absolute stud out there doing it. I love him for Dynasty, and I think he's very intriguing for redraft.
Yeah, I have to agree. When I was looking at the actual draft itself, unfortunately, he was in our Dynasty League, was taken just a few picks before mine.
Yep.
But when I was looking at him and I was looking at how people spoke about him, a lot of times you look at these guys who explode for a year or two, and you're like, can they do it again? Do they actually have anything that, like, is this actually a repeatable thing? It wasn't just because he had great weapons, but the throws he was making that people would point out, and I was watching on his tape, those were NFL level throws, tight windows, not a lot of things. He was throwing guys
and
open.
he was playing in a close to NFL system too. I mean,
it's just like the throws he could make. He could take a talented receiver that he's going to have in the NFL and put the ball where only they can get it. Granted, that takes some time, but I mean, he did that all in just a short span in college, and then I have the kid's mental game is what I like most.
He went from a guy who was barely considered draftable in the actual NFL draft to being the first overall pick in a year. Like, say what you will about some front offices, NFL teams aren't dumb for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't think the Bengals would have drafted him at number 1. And they basically drafted him, a month and a half before the draft.
Oh yeah, they had it locked in for.
I don't think he would have gone at that point if the Bengals didn't think they saw something special there. And I truly believe that Zach Taylor is going to, take the training wheels off right off the bat and just let this kid go out there and prove what he can do. And I think if the stars align, he could shock the NFL and he could end up being a top fantasy quarterback. And I mean, with his ADP, someone would end up being very happy to get themselves a Joe Burrow. I mean, right now Joe Burrow's ADP is currently 168. He's being drafted as the QB 23. So he's not going drafted in a lot of leagues. He's someone who could be a week 1 waiver ad because people didn't want to draft him, and all of a sudden he throws 3 touchdowns in the first week, 300 yards, and people are just scrambling to go grab him.
Yeah, so let me just give my 2 cents.
Sure.
Shoot.
Not completely sold on Joe Burrow.
Sure.
Okay.
But looking back at his college stats, I mean, obviously his senior year was his pop year.
Yep.
Had a lot of weapons. Like you said, basically an NFL system.
Yep.
I'm seeing it more as you're laying it out for me, but still not completely sold.
Well, so listen to this also. Fantasy Pros has him as the 13th easiest schedule going into the season, and he does start off with a tough matchup against the Chargers. After that, he gets Cleveland, Philly, Jacksonville. So he's someone who could splash very hard early in the season, and then in the playoff stretch, he gets Washington, New York, Miami in a row, weeks 11 through 13. Like he's got some. You don't want him in week 15. He's playing Pittsburgh that week, but he also plays Houston in week 16, which is fantasy championships for most people. He's got some cake matchups in the right times for fantasy owners.
Yeah, like I said, as you're laying it out for me, I'm seeing it a little bit more. I gotta see what he can do in the NFL first. I don't trust rookies often But I think if there's a rookie, especially a quarterback, that can get it done, it's Joe Burrow. Like, I mean, he's got the weapons. He's got the coach. He's got the schedule, which is honestly the most important part to me. Is like, I mean, when I was streaming Jimmy Garoppolo last year, he had Arizona twice in 3 weeks, 4 touchdowns a game. Schedule is one of the most important parts to me. I don't look at bye weeks, but I mean, I often stream cornerback when I'm in leagues where I don't have Pat Mahomes. So I'm seeing it more and more. Still not completely sold, but I can see where you're coming from.
All right, so take us away with your next take, Vitali.
Yeah, to get us out of the mire that is the quarterback discussion, I'm going to go and talk about the most important position in fantasy sports. That would be the running back position. Yep, it's kicker, defense, O-line. Anyways, getting back to it, running back, specifically the Colts. I think the hatred for Marlon Mack has gotten too far out of hand.
Yep.
That was to the point where we're drafting the rookie running back who hasn't even confirmed has taken the job from Marlon Mack in the 4th round, and Marlon Mack currently is sitting all the way back. Sorry, Bill pulled up, but yeah, he's sitting back at RB 42, being drafted as the 32nd running back off the board. I think it's just criminal, mainly because of this. So to put my take out there, I believe Marlon Mack will be an RB 20 or better, mainly because of this. Last year, he was 10th in the amount of carries, 10th in yardage. He averaged 4.4 on the ground in only 14 games, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He produced. He just wasn't a sexy name, and except for those first few weeks, when he was the RB1, RB2 up there with Eckler,
He was torching it.
he was torching it. We all wanted a piece of that.
Cam was thriving in it.
Oh, yeah.
And not to mention, we have all talked and how much we've salivated over that offensive line for running backs. They have one of the best in the league. So when I look at this team, who also has the easiest strength of schedule for running backs, by the way, I look at this now that they have Phillip Rivers in tow. Phillip Rivers knows how to handle having 2 quality running backs on staff. But I think the rookie's going to need some time. Marlon Mack has 1 year left on his contract. Why wouldn't the Colts use that up, pound him into the dirt, let him try and get a contract next year, and then let their rookie ease into the system and play the catching role? Because we know Marlon Mack can't catch balls. Nyheim Hines is an okay running back, but why not just bring in the new toy you just drafted in the 2nd round? That's the other part. It's not like they spent a high-round pick on Taylor. They waited and waited, took him in the 2nd round.
So I just want to add one thing to your take.
Sure.
Because you talked about the offensive line. PFF actually just released their 2020 preseason offensive line rankings. The Colts are number 1.
So I thought they were more in the 5th. The fact that
They were 3rd last year.
They were 3rd, yeah. So I knew that they were in the top 5. I knew they weren't number 1. They're now ranked as number 1 with the easiest strength of schedule for running backs. So even if Jonathan Taylor plays a big piece in this game, I could see it being a 2-headed, almost Melvin Gordon-esque, Austin Eckler-esque situation where you see one back taking most of the lion's share of the carries, and then Jonathan Taylor coming out of the backfield and catching passes and spelling him a bit. So I don't have any reason why I can't believe that he can at least be a 1,000-yard rusher with 6 touchdowns, which will easily outperform a 9th, 10th round ADP he's going at right now.
Yeah, he's going pretty far back.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
Yeah, you can draft Hooper before you draft him. I think that's the ridiculous part. So for me, it's just to keep it simple. Keep your eye on on Marlon Mack. Don't be afraid to reach a little bit just to secure an RB1 on a great team that's looking to have great rushing numbers.
Honestly,
he is slowly moving up, but according to Fantasy Pros live ADP right now, he is going in the 7th round.
Yeah, criminal.
If you can, I know I'm planning on going specifically in our draft, just so you guys know, and I'm going to give you guys heads up. I'm planning on going running back, first 3 rounds. If you can get your 3rd running back in the 7th round, who is a starter, That is insane.
Yeah, if your flex guy is 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, no problem.
Let's jump to Frankie here for a slightly more high-profile running back take here with Aaron Jones, I believe.
I'm glad that you brought up running backs because Aaron Jones touchdown leader last year.
Yep.
Just to pull him up again. 16 on the ground. I believe he also had 3 through the air, so 19 overall.
Sure.
19 TDs.
I think that he has full potential, and this goes back to my Aaron Rodgers kind of segment for the Matty Ice take a little bit. I think he has full potential to repeat as a touchdown leader. And if you look over the past 2 years,
You should deliver that take a little bit more calmly next time. Like, I think Aaron Jones has the potential to be the touchdown leader.
He's
You know what?
There's no spice for him to worry about.
in
He's calm about it.
2018, would you argue that the biggest threat to Aaron Jones is Jamal Williams?
No, in 2018, I would argue the biggest threat to Aaron Jones was Mike McCarthy.
Yes.
Irregardless.
Regardless.
Attempts in 2018 were split 133 to 121. Attempts in 2019 were split 236 to 107.
Okay.
So,
So you're all about the hashtag free Aaron Jones?
I would
Do not
say that
consider him freed at this point.
no, he's going into the last year of his contract.
100% carry year.
I think that the Packers are going to run him into the ground.
Because they've been such a run-heavy team in the past.
Well,
They have been trending that way.
they're definitely trending away from Jamal Williams. Is my point. And I think after the halfway point last season, they were the third. They had the third most rushing attempts in teams.
Yeah. And you don't have to worry about Jonathan Kuhn sniping any touchdowns anymore. You just got to worry about that new running back.
So
A.J. Dillon, yes.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
Dillon.
well, no. So I think that they drafted A.J. Dillon for the future because they see Aaron Jones. I think they're going to run him.
I think actually you can probably just throw out this entire Packer draft. Like, Matt LaFleur was probably doing it drunk or blindfolded.
No, the thing I'll say to that is I think they're planning for the future. Aaron Jones is going to look for money. They're going to run him into the ground. And he's going to... I think he's going to produce.
So to be clear, you think for your Caliente take, you believe that Aaron Jones is going to repeat as the touchdown leader for running backs, correct?
Yes. I think
I wholeheartedly disagree. So feel free to take Aaron Jones early.
I will take him at number 8.
So, Frankie, I just want, as someone who bought Eddie Lacy with the first overall pick after that boom year.
Wait, hold on. Wait. First overall?
First overall.
There was a time when Fat Ed was that good.
It was him and Shady.
Yeah.
And I decided to go with the young talent over the surefire thing. What do you say to the people like us who've been burned by Fat Ed? Why should we go back to the Packers?
I mean, I don't think Aaron Jones has a cheese addiction.
Well, no. Like I said, they're trending away from that two-back system. They're going to the Aaron Jones premier back, and he's also shown he can do it through the air as well. I mean, last year.
Does the fact that Devontae Adams hurt for a lot of last year not worry you about impacting Aaron Jones's passing volume?
I'm less worried about the passing volume because while he has shown that. I mean, Devontae Adams missed 4 games?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but it was around. I mean, to be fair,
he did miss 4 games. So
if we're all talking and we're all thinking positively of the Packers system, we don't have to look at what they did last year and say, is he going to get the same slice? There's just going to be more slices to go around if they're slinging more touchdowns.
And that's why it's a hot take. Yeah. I don't agree that he's going to repeat as the touchdown leader because touchdowns are fluky and it's unlikely he does. But if he does, if you draft him early, you're going to be happy.
One last thing, just to play devil's advocate on my own take.
Oof.
So you're really, really sold on that then?
No, I'm sold on it, but I will say, you do have to look at the volatility. There were those couple games at the end of the season where he did get 3 touchdowns and 4 touchdowns back to back. So those do account for a lot of those touchdowns. But I think that, like I said, the Packers are trending away from Jamal Williams and the 2-back system. They're going to go more towards Aaron Jones and run it to the ground as last year.
So I'm going to jump to a different running back who I actually believe should be being drafted above Aaron Jones. I would like to talk to you all about newfound, or not newfound because I've loved him in the past, but my refound love for Kenyon Drake. I backslid a little bit to him. Kenyon Drake currently going as, according to Fantasy Pros ADP, the RB12 at pick 25.
Where do you have him finishing, Ian?
Oh, I have him finishing in the top 3 with number 1 upside, and I'll tell you why. So, we all talk about free Aaron Jones. I think we're forgetting like the original free insert running back here campaign, and that was Kenyon Drake, a guy who for years the fantasy community considered a very talented running back stuck in an awful system with a coach who hated him. He literally used Frank Gore over him. And Frank Gore was, at that time, if I recall, 714 years old.
Frank Gore is an Eagles legend, but watch your mouth.
I digress. Kenyon Drake, last season. So he's got good size as a running back. You know, it's not like he's like undersized or anything. He's good size, good quickness. Last season, 170 attempts, 817 yards, 8 touchdowns, 50 receptions, 68 targets, 345 yards through the air. Not all of that was with Arizona, obviously. He got traded there mid-season. Let's talk about what he did with Arizona. 8 games. In those 8 games, he had 123 attempts for 643 yards and 8 touchdowns. He also had 35 targets for 28 catches and 171 through the air. No touchdowns. If you do nothing more than just project out his pace over 16 games, he ends up with 240 attempts, 1,286 yards, 56 catches, 342 yards, and obviously with that increase in air volume, he's going to get a few into the end zone. I have him at, if you're going conservatively, because this isn't what I'm projecting him for, conservatively, 8 touchdowns on the ground and 4 through the air. That comes out to 262 fantasy points in half-point PPR. So that puts him just behind Eckler last season for number 7. So good but not great. But like I said, that's not projecting any improvement on his end in that offense. So I think it's silly to not think about how he can grow in that offense a little bit. I mean, obviously, this is another year with Kyler at the helm. Kyler is another year older. He knows the offense a little bit better. He's been completing more drives. They did stall out in a lot of drives last year. It's also been another season for Kenyon to get integrated with the system. We all know that Cliff Kingsbury wants to run 65, 70, 75 plays a game, so you want to be tied to a high volume. If they can actually do that, you want to be tied to that offense any way you can, because all that extra volume is going to mean good things for their lead running back. And then let's not forget about the biggest thing here. David Johnson's not there anymore. He got traded away in the offseason because Bill O'Brien had a stroke. Like, they traded away David Johnson and they got DeAndre Hopkins back. You can't ignore, like, so Kenyon ran a lot out of the shotgun last season. 79% of the time running out of the, or I believe he was running out of the shotgun, if I'm recalling my stats correctly. DeAndre Hopkins can make it even easier for him to open up lanes. So when he's running from position behind Kyler is a running quarterback as it is. He's already opening up lanes. Now you have a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins. You have to double him. There's maybe 3 corners in the league who can cover DeAndre Hopkins one-on-one. You have to double DeAndre. That means that there's even less of a stacked box now against Kenyon. So Kenyon's already running from a bit of a disguised position, and now he has the best wide receiver in football pulling away coverage, and Kyler, who they constantly have to spy, because if you don't spy Kyler's going to burn you. I don't see any reason why people shouldn't be all on the Kenyon Drake train unless you just don't think he's that talented, which I full-heartedly believe he is. I have him conservatively as a top 7 running back, and his ceiling is 1.
So a few things to touch on. 1, I do agree with the coaching wholeheartedly. I think that offense is going to be probably top 3 in the league. I think that running a lot of plays only benefits you fantasy-wise. Second, do you think that the void that is going to be filled by DeAndre Hopkins that David Johnson left hurts Kenyon Drake at all.
No.
And also,
DeAndre has a very different target share than Kenyon has.
And also, the last thing, I don't like statting people out for what they're on pace for. I get where you're coming from with if you just double whatever he did because he played 8 games for Arizona, whatever. As someone who had Eddie Royal in fantasy.
No, okay, but I'm going to stop you there because Kenyon Drake and Eddie Royal aren't on the same plane of existence as far as talent.
I agree with that.
So therefore, the comparison is null and void.
No, the comparison is I don't like the on pace. What I was trying to say is I don't like the on pace argument because, look at Jordy. 7 touchdowns through 5 games.
Right, but the difference was we got to see the on pace argument here is we got to see a snippet of how they wanted to use him. They obviously couldn't use him for more because they didn't own him for the first 8 games of the season.
So, if you mind me jumping in, the biggest
Go ahead.
reason,
So
for most of these I'm in. I am very off the Kenyon Drake train. But I will admit that I am having to had owned him while he was on Miami, so there's a bit of salt in the wound there. But when I look back at him, the thing that stands out to me is if you take 3 key games away from him and leave him with 5, he is a mediocre, if not poor.
He did score most of his touchdowns in 1 game, but with a full season, that should balance out more.
Right. My issue is more of you look at his week against San Fran, 100 yards, respectable game, one touchdown. And then after that, it's 35 on the ground, 6 in the air, 67 on the ground, 13 in the air. And it's like, and then right after that, after the bye week where he gets more time to get cohesion with his team, the Rams and Pittsburgh, 31 yards on the ground, 37 yards on the ground.
So Pittsburgh was a very rough defense last year to run against.
I understand. It's just
he might not be a Saquon, but he could. But given volume, and especially given volume with DeAndre over the top, I think that Kenyon should have plenty of room to run this season.
right. And like I said, I understand the hot take is it's dark horse. So you
Right. That's why I say conservatively top 7.
Conservatively, I could see it there, but I feel like he's gonna be a top player who, to me, it feels like he's gonna be a guy who burns you on bad matchups. Whereas a top elite talent sometimes can at least produce a mild week.
No, that's fair. I'm basing this on what I saw last year combined with how I think they're going to use him this year and the additional pieces. Obviously, I'm not drafting him at 3, but I think he's top 7 safe, top 3 fire, top 1 is obviously as high as you can go. But I think he's someone who, if everything breaks his way and he gets touchdown luck, he ends up as the number 1 running back. You want to play us out here and talk about your last take?
I've got nothing, so.
That's fine. So I had to get a little more into it, so I'm resetting myself and refocusing, getting the negativity out because, once again, this is another guy who I think the fantasy community is trying to sleep on, and I'm going to go ahead and push my Caliente take of Le'Veon Bell will be a top 7 running back this year. So, to back those numbers, yeah, like I said,
I love the grimace from Frankie.
The grimace, that's because you look at it, but you forget this man is still Le'Veon Bell.
Oh, I was grimacing more because I don't think it's that Caliente of a take.
I'm surprised the fantasy community would not agree with you, as he's currently going as the 20th running back.
Wait till you hear my rant.
So, going back to Le'Veon, yes, I hate Adam Gase. I think he's a black hole for fantasy production and does not deserve a job as an NFL head coach. But when you look back at last year was, I think, the anomaly to end all anomalies. Injuries. And then, do you guys remember the last time we had a quarterback go out with mono? I mean that wasn't in high school.
I think it was when I was in high school.
Yeah, I was gonna say
and it was my high school quarterback.
Exactly. The last time a quarterback went out with that, I don't think we don't have much to talk about as far as other pro quarterbacks have had to deal with this. But I assume
there's not a lot of data there.
No, I think they're gonna get a handle on that. I think Darnold's a very talented quarterback. And when this offense is clicking, we can see production that comes out of guys here, and we always wanted to get it. Quincy Enunwa, guys with no talent, we're getting stuff in there. Robbie Anderson, had a role in this offense, and you wanted to have him as your flex guy, maybe as a
To
starting
be
player.
fair, Robbie Anderson didn't have no talent.
He's very good at running straight.
Yes.
My whole thing is this. I think people are looking too harshly at that, and he was getting so much fun. He had 245 attempts last year.
Sure.
Basically, they were just handing the ball off to him, and then he was just staring at a face of defenders coming through that line, because it was Swiss cheese last year. They invested talent, they invested draft picks into that line to improve it. Probably one of the most investments we've seen for this offseason. I don't think he's going to have 3.2 carries a game again. And
Wait, 3.2 carries a game?
3.2 yards per
3.2 yards a carry, sorry.
Okay. That's...
So, if you...
Yeah, we worried there for a second.
I was like, that's
like I said, with Pittsburgh, who I will admit is a better offense, he was getting 260, 290 up in those carries. And that was an offense that was producing. And he was producing top 3 numbers.
Sure.
So I don't see a way where if he's able to get back to his style of running, which is give him that half-second step behind the line.
It's the patience style.
Yeah, that patience out where he waits for the pocket to the running lane to develop, see where defenders are coming, where he can make that quick jump cut and get to the outside. Nobody, I don't think anyone who's a serious fantasy player will doubt his talent. So when you look at it, you have to look at the everything else around him. The line, that's getting better. Quarterback play. No more mono this year, hopefully. The wide receivers, that's still a bit of a nebulous one. But at the end of the day, because of the lack of wide receivers, that could just mean more passing work for Le'Veon.
I do think Brashad Perriman was a good pickup for them.
He's solid, but
I think he's kind of
his hairline starts back
non-factor.
here, so
So I'll say he's kind of a trap. Like I don't
I think he's a good football play. I don't know if he's...
I mean, who else is there?
Jamison Crowder, baby.
Denzel Mims is intriguing.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not the greatest receiving core, so I think they're going to have to lean on Le'Veon Bell more. And if Adam Gase wants to prove that he's an actual head coach, he's going to have to use the weapons he has, and Le'Veon Bell is probably his best weapon.
He is someone who could be out after this year. I don't agree he's going to go as high as you. I think he is being underdrafted, but I guess that's something we'll see as the season goes on. I think it's an intriguing look at it, though, because especially as a Pats fan, I'm not really too bullish on that Jets offense.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to do a beer check here as we are running a little long.
I'm almost done with 4.
Okay, you beat me then. I have 4 in my glass right now.
I was much more conservative, a lot more talking today. So
Let's
We'll throw the floor to you, Frank. We'll shut our microphones off.
So let's go back. Well, let's not shut our microphones off, but
I already threw it out.
Regardless, let's go back to Matty Ice for a little bit. On my timeline on Twitter today, I saw a poll that was... Actually, turn your microphones on for this because I want to get your guys' input on this. I saw a poll that was rank these quarterbacks: Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, and Kirk Cousins.
Are we talking like lifetime or...
Real NFL or fantasy?
So we'll say real NFL.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Actually, well, for the sake of the show, we'll say fantasy.
Okay.
Where do you rank them?
Dak, Matty Ice, Carson, Kirk.
All right. Vitaly, what's your take?
I have the same list, except I put Matty Ice on top because we've already seen him have 2 number 2 productions, and Dak hasn't had.
I'm future-proofing Dak here. So.
All right, so basically the whole point of my rant is Matty Ice gets the most disrespect out of any quarterback just because he's Matty Ice.
That's because he chokes in the 4th.
Yep.
He doesn't deserve the nickname Matty Ice because he doesn't have any ice in his veins.
I don't have the stats in front of me, so I'm not gonna say the statement I was going to make. But
28-3.
Okay, that was more of coaching.
This is his 5.
This was more of coaching, but we've seen Matty Ice have an MVP season. We've seen him finish 2 twice. Over the past 5 years, he's been top 10. Like, he's averaged out, I think, 9.6, so we'll call it top 10. I think that Matty Ice doesn't get as much respect as he deserves as being a good quarterback. Not even just in terms of fantasy, but just overall. I mean, go back to last year. 4,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 picks. I mean, 14 picks is kind of a lot. But I mean, we've seen him be that guy before. He's always kind of been that guy as long as I've been playing fantasy. I think that he just gets hate because he's Matty Ice. I yield my time.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for our Hot Takes episode. Join us next Monday as we probably do another mock draft episode, I think. We're gonna be trying to bring you guys some good usable content to prep for your fantasy drafts as it gets closer and closer. We'll be doing randomized and probably half-point scoring for our next mock draft. So
sounds good.
Tune in for that. I believe it is Frankie's turn to buy beer next week, so prepare for something suitably hoppy.
Honestly, the ham grew on me.
Good takes today, boys. I like the calienteness. I wish Frankie had prepared more takes, but it is what it is.
Listen, I'm very level-headed. Don't like the.
You're not.
Let's see.
All right, that'll be it for us. See you guys on Monday.